All right, everyone, welcome. Welcome to our Illinois State Legislation webinar for Safer Streets. My name is Maggie Shawinski from the Active Transportation Alliance. And with me today, we have Amy Rynell, the Executive Director of the Active Transportation Alliance, and John Amdor, is a partner at Netquits Amdor Anderson Group, which is our lobbyist firm. And together, Amy and John have spent hundreds of hours probably at the state capitol. They know the halls very well. So we're very excited to bring them here to speak about our priorities this year to create safer streets throughout our state. So just quickly, before I turn it over to Amy, we'll be starting off uh, giving you an overview of our legislative agenda for this year and talk a little bit more about what's possible for 2026, review the bills that we're actively working on, that we're watching, and then discuss a little bit about how you can help, how you can get involved as an advocate, as a village city staff, as an elected official. And then we'll open it up to Q&A from all of you. So if you do have any questions for Amy and John during the presentation, if you can add it to the chat box, I'll be monitoring the chat, and then at the end we'll dig into that and hopefully address some of your questions. So with that, I will pass it on to Amy.
Happy lunchtime, everybody. Thanks for joining us. A lot of what we're going to talk about is embedded in a multi-year Safe Streets for All state agenda that we've been developing. For those of you who were at our member meeting, you saw some really big boards of all the things that we know will move the dial on making our roads safe for all road users. And we have a long ways to go, as you know. A lot of what we're proposing is embedded in what we know from research that works, what we know from other states that works, and that have a proven impact on safety in one way or another. Much of it's derived from what's called the safe systems approach, which has, as you can see from the graphic, is a multifaceted approach to safety. And I'm just going to actually what's in the slices of the pie. I'm going to read what's around it because it's kind of the philosophy of this work. That death and serious injuries on our roadways are unacceptable. Humans make mistakes. Humans are vulnerable. We share responsibility around this. Safety is proactive and redundancy is critical. So we're fighting for a lot of things that intersect with each other and overlay with each other to make for a really strong safety package for Illinois. We're not going to talk about everything today. We're mostly going to talk about 2, 3, and 4, but I'll just for a second talk about number 1. For those of you who have been working with us for the last, let's say, 7-ish years, you will know that we led a campaign during the state's last big capital bill to get money dedicated for bicycle, pedestrian, transit infrastructure in Illinois that we won. And so today, every year, there's over $50 million allocated for safe streets infrastructure. But we know we can do better. So we're working on some different policy packages that are really robust to direct more money and solutions into sustainable and active transportation. That's called the Transportation Choices Act. So stay tuned for more on that. Safe speeds. So many of you have heard me talk about safe speeds before, but the speed limit undergirds so many of the decisions we make on our street designs. And Illinois has not updated its speed limit statutes or its vehicle code around speeds in a long time, and in a way that really is safety forward, especially in urban districts. So we'll talk about that. Anything that we do on the policy side needs reinforcement. So we're going to talk a little bit about e-motos and super speeder legislation, and then we'll end on how do we make other safety enhancements, get other safety enhancements across the finish line. While we're focusing on safe streets today, we are still working on transit stuff. So just because we had a big transit win doesn't mean transit's been entirely fixed and the battle's over. So on transit, just very quickly, the biggest thing that will likely happen this year is just a cleanup bill to clarify any errors or things that were unclear in the big package we passed last year. There's other things we're working on in transit, but that'll be one of the big legislative things. So you'll hear more from us about that later. Why we can't give up on the fight for safe streets. I've got millions of slides on this, but I will share one. And that's just our sheer statistics of pedestrians and bicyclists who are dying in traffic crashes in Illinois. 1 in 5 crashes, the people who die are pedestrian or cyclist, not people inside the vehicle. And that crash fatality rate for people outside of the vehicle has been skyrocketing. You can see it's grown 42% between 2017 and 2025. This is all from IDOT's crash data portal. So this is unacceptable. Cars have gotten safer for people inside of them and increasingly unsafe for people outside of them. I thought I had one more slide, Maggie. Oh, did I hide it? Oh, I put it later. Okay. So that's why we care. That's why we're talking about safe streets today. I'll pass it over to John to talk about what is possible this year. It's a very atypical legislative year.
Thanks, Amy and Maggie, and everybody. Appreciate you taking the time to join. It's a pleasure to be with you. So Amy's right. It is a challenging year in the General Assembly. I think that what the overarching issue is, as is true every year, is what's the state budget going to look like, and we as a state face some old challenges that are being presented with a new twist, and I think that is making everyone really hesitant to do much of anything to rock the boat. That's often true in election years, as folks I'm sure are aware. In November, we've got a general election where the entire Illinois General Assembly is up for re-election, and I think about 2/3 of the Senate, and of course all our statewide elected officials. And that I think is having a real suppressive effect, both because of the budget uncertainty and a desire to constrain costs at the state and avoid embarking on programs that are going to have a fiscal impact. And then as well, sort of, looking at Washington and the array of ways that we see different policy changes being promoted, typically, I think, in ways that are harmful to policies that I think most people in Illinois would support. Again, sort of an awareness that we need to pick our fights, figure out do the things we know how to do that we know are working, and not push the envelope too much. So I think that is all adding up to a really what will likely be a pretty historically unproductive spring legislative session. Not that there won't be good and important things that get done, but again, I think it's we're not going to see a whole heck of a lot of big changes. I think that the two major issues that get flagged as possibly seeing action are actions imposing regulations on data centers, which has been discussed for several years, and whether or not the state will pass a mega projects bill that would apply to proposed large development projects across the state of all sorts of different types, but certainly the one that gets the most attention is the proposed replacement for Soldier Field. TBD whether either of those things get across the finish line. But again, I think in terms of things that like you'll hear about a lot, those are at high on the list. And I think that if both of those things got accomplished, that a lot of folks and got accomplished, well, that a lot of people would feel that this was a very successful spring session, along with the budget. But what does that mean for our nice little bills that we hope can just kind of fly under the radar? I think we'll see. We are not proposing legislation that we'll talk about in a bit that has a great fiscal impact. And so I think that our hope is that we continue to work on a kind of one-on-one legislator by legislator basis to build up our roll calls and build the support to get those done. And certainly there's a role for you and everybody else who cares about these issues to play in getting these done.
Thanks, John. So some of the stuff we'll talk about today. Can we leverage a weak speed limit proposal to advance our speed limit goals? Jury's still out. Will the Secretary of State get to an agreed bill across a wide range of diverse stakeholders on e-motos and fast micromobility regulation? Might this be the year we get safety stop into law? And is Illinois ready for a Waymo robotaxi pilot? So we'll start digging into some of these and more. Next slide. So speed limits. Just really quickly, you may have seen our blog about a speed limit bill that has been introduced in the legislature that we testified in opposition to, but we have not yet done action alerts on because we are trying to negotiate to a better solution. The bill has some good stuff in it. It's also really messy, and it has some really important things that are notably absent. What it does is it removes the engineering traffic study requirement for lowering speeds on local roads in urban districts. But the local ordinance requirement remains, and the policy doesn't apply to state roads. So what that means is a community, Cicero, would have to pass a city ordinance on the roads that it wants to lower the speed limit on. And that would have to pass their city council process. So that exists today. What's being removed is the other piece of that puzzle, which is the engineering and traffic study, which has quite a range of costs depending on the size of the roadway being studied and the length of the study. So that's good. We shouldn't have a really high burden of proof to lower the speed limit. So that's a good thing. It also lowers the residence district maximum speed limit to 20. It's really interesting that they say maximum speed limit because the speed limit is the maximum. But we drivers, I don't drive a lot, but drivers treat the speed limit as the base that they must drive and then go above it. So we do have a very messed up relationship as drivers with the speed limit not being the maximum you're supposed to drive, the maximum allowable. Where this falls short is it does not address urban district speed limits on state-controlled roadways. And those are the roadways that cause us so much harm. A lot of our crashes, if you look at the high injury network in Cook County, almost half of them are on the state roads where the fatalities are happening or the serious injuries. We hear all the time from municipalities, some of which are on this call, about problems on state roads that they want to put in safety infrastructure, be it a bike lane, a crosswalk, a sidewalk, and the speed limits being set at 30 and 35 really prevent making that a safe roadway. So this legislation does not address the state-controlled roadway, and it continues to treat lowering of a speed limit as an opt-in. And we really think that the default should be towards the safer, lower speed, and the opt-in would be for certain roadways where IDOT needs a different speed limit for some reason. So I don't know what's going to happen with this. As I said, there's other concerns that we have about the bill language, but this is kind of the essence of it. Um, so that's speed limits. I'll say one more thing about it on the next slide, Maggie, which is just some of the evidence behind why we're asking for a lower speed limit. So our urban district speed limit right now is 30. Some roads are actually higher than that. And we are increasingly an outlier. If you look at that map of the states, the dark blue are the ones with urban district speed limits higher than 25. And we are not in good company there. So you can see many other states, 22, have urban district speed limits that are 20 or 25. And you can see on the left, the reason we're fighting for lower urban district speed limits on state roads is because we have a lot, pretty much evenly split share of fatalities on state routes and on city streets. And that's just a 2-year look at that. Urban district is kind of a strange definition, but at its essence, it's dense areas where you're going to have a lot more people moving around. So business districts, and Chicago, and many of our downtowns. John, do you want?
Sorry,
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
talk a bit about just on speed limits, just briefly. I do think like the hearing on this bill in the Senate that Amy testified at a few weeks ago was, I think, a really interesting and important evidence of the fact that legislators hear about this too. At that hearing, Senate President Harman, Senate Assistant Majority Leader Laura Murphy, both I think really expressed their frustration with IDOT, and with all due respect to the folks there, that there is not a responsivity from the state agency to constituents or local government partners when it comes to speeds and design of state controlled routes. And so I am, and I know there are plenty of other legislators who feel that same way, that, it takes them years and years and years to maybe get a successful safety project at a problematic intersection or along a corridor. And I think a lot of that is thanks to work of folks being in their local legislators' ear about what they want to see in their communities.
So keep asking. So for e-motos, I'm going to turn it over to John, but I'll just mention really quickly why we're working on this. We have seen an increase in devices coming onto the market that go a lot faster than e-bikes or traditional electric scooters, that are being bought as if they're an e-bike or an electric scooter. They're being bought for children to use. And there's a lot of safety implications with these devices. And it's creating a backlash against e-bikes. And so we've seen throughout, especially the suburbs, a lot of different municipalities passing all sorts, kind of a mishmash of different restrictions on a different range of devices. So we want to make sure that bikes are still treated as bikes, and bikes can go where bikes can go, and higher speed devices are properly categorized in the vehicle code, so they're being used responsibly and safely and treated that way. So I'll turn over to John about the process we're in, with just one caveat. There's like 8 bills on this in the legislature. And John, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no need to pay attention to any of them. But you can explain why I say that.
Yeah. So Amy's absolutely, I probably stopped counting at 8. And I think that thankfully, given the broad range of interest in this, and I think most legislators have come at it after, there have been some tragedies where people have lost their lives, and particularly kids have lost their lives riding these types of devices. And legislators tried to craft different ideas to respond to what happened in their district. And again, unfortunately, there have been several of those. And so Thankfully, and I think appropriately, Secretary of State Janulius's office has convened a stakeholder process that which are never easy when there are as many cooks in the kitchen as there are on this subject. That has been trying and sharing iterations of language that tries to encapsulate everybody's need. And I think I do think there is, and certainly from the legislators that are in the room and the ones that we talk to that have introduced bills, that there is a common shared goal and understanding in distinguishing between class 1, 2, and 3 e-bikes and these newer types of devices that in respect to my partnership and friendship with our motorcycle advocate friends. I don't say e-moto anymore because they don't like that, but we got to call them something. So, but I think I feel very good that we're not going to see broad statewide restrictions on the traditional e-bikes. That there will, whatever we wind up with is going to distinguish between the two. And I think the devil is really in the details about how to do that. I think our proposal and goal, and I think the goal of a lot of folks is to try and do it as simply and cleanly as possible. Try to anticipate future developments of products that might come on to the market that might sort of skirt around these categories, but not to let the perfect be the enemy of the good, and recognize that if the market adapts, we start having challenges with devices that somehow skirt the requirements, that will be able to come back and revisit the issue, or give the Secretary of State's office the flexibility to do that without having to change state law. But broadly speaking, I think most stakeholders want to see a comprehensive statewide set of rules, get rid of this patchwork of ordinances that we've seen pop up, and that's a rarity. Typically, organizations like the Illinois Municipal League don't want to see preemption of municipal ability to regulate devices, but they've indicated that in this instance that this issue is an exception to that. I think folks want the age requirements are a big part of this. I think our preference is to, essentially say treat it like cars. Don't make it harder to ride a micro mobility device than it is to drive and operate a car. And to the extent possible and practical, really mirror those rules when it comes to things like passengers on e-bikes and e-motos that are designed to accommodate them. That if you're a 16-year-old and you're allowed to drive a car with a younger sibling in it, you really should be able to ride an e-bike with a younger sibling on it. For these faster types of devices, I think that we believe they should be treated more like motor vehicles and require an individual to have a driver's license and carry insurance and register the vehicle. Probably most critically to a lot of us is to again recognize that these things aren't bikes. They might look like it, but they sure don't. They don't quack like it. And we really don't want to see them in bike lanes or on trails that are meant for people on traditional bikes, traditional e-bikes, or people on foot. I think too that again that we know that the market needs to have a role here. That these things are being marketed as oftentimes as e-bikes. They're being sold to parents as things that are appropriate for kids. And it's I don't think a lot of people believe that young kids should be able to operate vehicles that can go 30 plus miles an hour. So we'd like to see additional disclosures and requirements on retailers to clearly label devices and be better actors in the space of selling these devices to Illinoisans. And then again, knowing that this is not something that we do want to see restrictions on modifying devices aftermarket, similar to what you see with motor vehicles in a lot of instances, to ensure that devices that are being sold legally, that people aren't sort of back ending their way into making them faster and more powerful and more dangerous to use on Illinois streets or trails, with other micromobility riders that are going much slower.
Thanks, John. So stay tuned on that one. We may have more to say as we get closer to a bill. That process, by the way, we actually drafted the legislation initially, and then the Secretary of State did their own draft, and then someone else did a draft. So we're merging a lot of people's drafts and then meeting every few weeks. And in between, we're sending a lot of memos. So we've written more memos this legislative session on policy than in a while. So there's a lot of other things we've worked on, bills we've written and negotiated that, or bills that our partners are working on that we're paying attention to. I'll take the safety stop. So this, some folks call it the Idaho stop. Some folks call it stop as yield. Stop as yield is probably the most accurate, which would allow bicyclists approaching a stop sign to proceed through the intersection without making a complete stop. If they slow down and if they have the right of way, and yield to pedestrians and other vehicles who have the right of way. So we, for those of you who were tracking this last year, we were able to negotiate the bill with some of the stakeholders that have been opposing it or expressing concerns. IDOT, the trucking associations, they are one of the most common groups weighing in on our bills, related, I think, to their liability mindset. I think the Motorcycle Association weighed in on this one too, and we were able to get some language improvements to get to a bill that ultimately passed the Senate nearly unanimously, and ran into some stumbling blocks in the House, including running out of time. The bill was Senate Bill 2111. So that is the bill that ultimately was what passed for the transit bill. So it was still put to good work, but some people think this bill has already passed because the transit bill has this same bill headline, because it was the bill that was used for transit. So this will be in committee, we think, this week. And we have an action alert out and about to send out a request for witness slips. So keep your eye out on that. John, do you want to take bicyclists as intended versus permitted users? This bill we redrafted last year and are still working. We're now on a 15+ year journey on this one. And I actually think it will pass. I am not sure that it would pass this year, but we are building some new legislative champions that can handle, help work their peers, which we need a lot of peer-to-peer work on this. So anyway, sorry, I said for you to talk about it, John, and then I started talking about it.
No,
Can you tell people what this means? It's so,
I think it's more like a 25-year effort at this point. But this, I believe in the late 90s, and I'm sure there's folks on the call who are even more familiar with this than I am. But the Illinois Supreme Court rendered a decision, Bow versus Wayne Township, that essentially said that cyclists are permitted users of roadways, but not intended users. And what that did was provide a lot of, I would say, protection for municipal governments from being sued by people on bikes that are injured based on conditions on the roadway that if they been driving a motorcycle or a motorcycle or a motor vehicle, would have been a liability for the municipality, and that municipalities don't have the obligation to maintain all their roadways for safe use by cyclists, essentially, because while cyclists are allowed to do it, it's not designed for them, and it's sort of they ride at your own risk. I believe this decision was affirmed within the last few years in another case of all day maybe versus the city of Chicago. And this bill has been floating out there in various iterations really since BAUB was handed down. As Amy said, I think we decided last year to take another run at it with Representative Maura Hirschauer from Batavia, who has been a great champion on this, and I think we hope she will continue to be. I think this bill has gotten really the full court press from our friends at the Municipal League and the Councils of Government and other associations representing units local governments. And their argument essentially is that it would lead to the catastrophic insurance rate increases. So our plan, we did not reintroduce this bill last year. It has been posted to committee again, but I think we know that there remains a great deal of hesitation on the part of the committee members, given those fears expressed by municipalities. So we have been, and I think continue to be doing research into understanding how municipal insurance rates as it relates to the conditions on roadways, how those are structured and what the costs are there, and hope to be able to come back in the new General Assembly next year with either a refined bill that allays those concerns or with improved arguments that we hope we'll be able to overcome them.
This is another one of those where other states don't have this. So this relates back to that particular ruling in Wayne Township from years and years ago. So we do have a few things happening in the background on this and are happy to connect with folks on some next steps. The next bill we'll talk about really briefly is stopping super speeders, which you may be following this from Families for Safe Streets or from headlines because it just passed, I believe, in Virginia. So it's been slowly passing in the last year or two in other states. The simplest way to put it is for people who would be losing their license, having their license suspended, their ability to drive taken away due to, types of offenses, number of offenses, other things. Instead of that, they could be in this program, which is akin to what we do with folks who have DUIs, which is put a device in the vehicle that it's a speed delimiter, would limit their ability to speed. And so this is slowly taking off around the country, and it's going to be in a committee, or it'll be heard in committee very briefly, I think tomorrow, and we're waiting on an amendment, which will change the language. So, but the amendment essentially does, I think, what I said it does. The things I will just tell us or let you all know relative to shortcomings of this have nothing to do with the bill itself. But for those of us in areas where our municipalities, which are very, very few, are allowed to use speed cameras, those tickets don't count towards this. So this would be state police type tickets that are going through the court system. Red light camera tickets are administrative tickets. So they would not, that speeding in Chicago, essentially, unless you're pulled over by police, this would not be addressing those speeders. So with any of these solutions, as I mentioned before, they're all pieces of the puzzle. None of them alone get us to safe streets, but if we start layering them all together, we're going to get a heck of a lot closer than we are today. The final bills I called out here, but there are many others, are some of the, I guess what folks would call urbanist oriented bills to do quick build infrastructure on IDOT roads, as well as directing IDOT to plan to build out a bicycle grid network. And those will be heard in a committee tomorrow, Appropriations Committee. Because those cost money, they're a lot longer of a haul and harder to move. But it's a good way to open the door in the conversation to having legislators understand what people want and what's possible. Anything else to say on those, John, before we? Okay, cool. The final thing we're just going to touch on, it's not something we're working on right now because there's nothing happening, is autonomous vehicle legislation. So, John, do you want to just talk a little bit about the context for this? And then I can tell folks what we're weighing in on and paying attention to.
Yeah, I'm sure folks have probably seen that autonomous vehicle companies are really eager to begin operating in Illinois. What I think in 2017 or 2018, there was a state law passed that preempted municipal governments from regulating or banning autonomous vehicles, and I believe there was a task force at the time, but really that was under the Rauner administration, and since then, other than bills popping up here and there, there's not been a lot of serious movement on that. But in the last year or so, a lot of that has changed, as I think primarily Waymo has built out its network and begun expanding the cities where they operate. And folks have seen they've actually brought some of their vehicles to Chicago, and I guess said they've begun mapping, but I think there seems to be consensus that they cannot begin driving autonomously and doing passenger pickup and drop off without state enabling legislation and with regulations. So there have been quite a few bills, at least these four bills that Amy listed on here. There's at least one more that I can think of offhand. There's talks about having some talks about it. I don't think any of those have really gotten underway yet. I don't think that really anybody sees this as a must-do issue for the legislature to tackle this spring, which I think is a good thing. I think there is probably a feeling that this technology is going to, at some point, this is going to happen. But certainly, I think from the sponsors that I've talked to, there is a commitment to do it the right way and in a way that where there's input from a wide variety of stakeholders, that we're not taking a cookie cutter bill that might have been just fine for another state, that this is going to be a process that is built for Illinois, that appreciates our unique geography and weather and needs, that contemplates the impact on transit, on bike ped safety, and on as well as on workers in different industries who could conceivably be displaced or affected by widespread deployment of autonomous vehicles.
Thanks, John. Yeah, John just summed up the things that we're paying attention to. Obviously, we are very pro safe streets. So there is a lot of vehicle technology that can make our streets a lot safer. And so there's some benefits to autonomous vehicle safety technology, but there's also a lot of things that are not transparent and tested. And we're in a region that has a transit system we just saved. So we don't want to be pulling folks off of transit when we're trying to get transit back to some new glory days. So there's a lot to consider here. We'll be focused a lot on safety and a lot on transit and accessibility for folks. Current technologies for autonomous vehicles don't include accessible vehicles. So there's just different considerations that we'll be assessing. Over to you, Maggie.
All right, thank you, Amy and John. We just want to briefly go over ways that you can all get involved before we open it up to your questions. And I know there's a couple in the chat right now, but please, if you do have any questions about the bills or any of the topics Amy and John just covered, please add them there because we still have some time to address whatever you all are interested in talking about. But how can you help? There are witness slips. This is something if you're on our email list, you've gotten emails about this in the past, but when a bill is called up, we can file witness slips on the Illinois General Assembly website and say that we are supporters or opponents of a bill. And so occasionally we'll be sending emails like that out. And we actually there are 2 bills right now that we're looking to get help with witness slips on, the Stop Super Speeders bill and the Safety Stop bill. Once I'm not sharing the screen, I'll try to put some things in the chat. So you can get to work on those witness slips and other ways to take action. But beyond witness slips, we also have action alerts. So we have a platform where you can easily just click a button and enter your address, and there is a pre-populated letter that will go directly to your lawmakers. And it's a great way to just easily reach out to your state representatives or senators about specific bills, different topics. And this is like one of our best ways to reach a lot of lawmakers in Springfield. And we have an action alert out right now as well on the safety stop, the stop as yield bill. So I'll post that link in the chat right now. So if you all took action, that's like 60 plus more senators and representatives that are getting a note about this. And you can also make adjustments to the letter as well to perhaps add your own personal story. What else can you do? You can actually, talk directly. You can reach out to your state lawmakers, tell them that, safe streets are really important to you, and really kind of share your personal stories or your interests behind why this is so essential for why we need this in our state. And John, I don't know if you want to talk more about this, but also talking to your local elected officials and staff at your village or city can make a big difference. So John, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, I think that the work in Springfield on these issues intersects and is informed and impacts work being done at the local level really profoundly. That it has certainly become more and more apparent to me that identifying allies who serve in elected office at the local level or work in local government can be really influential and persuasive and informative with their state legislators and with state agencies like IDOT. So I would really encourage folks that if you live next door to a village trustee or have a friend who serves on the school board, that encouraging them to get involved and speak up and bring these issues to the states in their capacity as a local official, I think would be really helpful. Whether that's supporting a bill, saying like, look, we know that this will be good for our community, or being more assertive with if they are looking to petition IDOT to lower the speed limit, just keeping at it. If they're having trouble, making sure that their state legislators know about the problems that they're having, again, as much as we can to build more folks who care about bike and pedestrian and transit usage. That those are really powerful allies to have.
Thanks, John. And then to continue on this list, lobby days. So we and other organizations do host lobby days down in Springfield, where this is like a group of advocates or individuals goes down to kind of make more of a, just bring more attention to transportation issues, safe streets issues. So Ride Illinois, our state um, uh, bicycle advocacy organization and a good partner of ours, they are hosting a lobby day in April. I believe it's a Friday, April 17th, focused on bike legislation. So go to Ride Illinois' website to learn more about their lobby day. And then the Illinois Environmental Council is hosting a lobby day, I believe at the end of May. Well, once we have some more solid information about this, we'll make sure to send out the details, unless John or Amy, you know more details, but that will be another lobby day at the very end of the session, which ends at the end of May, to really do a final push for transportation as well as other environmental related bills. And then finally, we are going to be producing fact sheets as well as some of our partners different, and we'll have other action alerts, other resources that you can take and share with, different decision makers and as well as your neighbors, your friends, your coworkers, your family. Just, the more people we get involved in this, the better, to lift up these issues. So our state lawmakers know that they're important. So let's see, I think, yeah, we'll open it up to Q&A with all of you. So I'm going to stop sharing here. So I can add some things to the chat, but there were a couple questions I've seen so far. So one is, this is just about e-bikes. There's 3 different classes of e-bikes. Class 1 and class 2 can go up to 20 miles per hour. Class 3 can go up to 28 miles per hour. And Valerie was wondering if there's any data behind that, saying that someone going 25 miles per hour, it feels like plenty for rails and bike lanes.
Yeah, we agree. Oh, go ahead, John.
Sorry, maybe we can say that I think that the definitions of e-bikes and state law and those classifications are mirrored from federal and industry standards. That's maybe not the most satisfying answer, but certainly when those were being enacted, that it was really looking to, again, I think, try to codify and standardize across the states what it meant to be an e-bike.
And then I just posted the safety stop action alert in the chat. So click on that link, everyone. Let's see, another question about trucks and side guards, underguards on trucks. Is there any legislation around that particular issue?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think when that's been brought up before, the sort of legal research and understanding that we have is that's really not an issue that states and local governments have the ability to regulate, that because of the Commerce Clause in the federal Constitution, you would need to go get federal action on that to apply it universally. Where the state and local governments have I think, more ability is in the fleets that they own or contract with, and ensuring that those have those types of safety things. I believe the city of Chicago requires those, but it's a good question about the state and something for us to look at.
Yeah, we were able to get the city of Chicago to commit to it on their vehicles. But because of the Interstate Commerce Clause, we haven't been able to pass a state law covering all trucks. I think, Maggie, though, I'm pretty sure this came up at the Zero Traffic Fatalities Task Force, where we might be able to get the state of Illinois to kind of advance their commitment on this. So we can keep working on that one.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see, a question about speed limits. So Carl's wondering on state-controlled roadways in urban areas, are local municipalities currently allowed to lower the speed limit when
They
IDOT?
are not. Yeah, it has to go through IDOT. You may have seen the headlines recently that LaGrange Park finally, after a lot of advocacy, um, and changes at IDOT that we've been working on through this other task force around how speeds are set, um, did approve a lower speed limit on a segment of a state road into downtown. But that's why we're pushing back really hard on this other bill because it's not touching state roads. And so we just need some new solutions. So, um, yeah,
Um,
lots of unacceptable answers, you all, which we understand fully. Like that's why we're working on this. The status quo is not okay.
Question about how do we lobby for increased enforcement of current road rules locally?
Um, Maggie, I sent you a different document. I don't know if you were able to pull up your email and share one page of it, page 8.
Let's see. Open it.
So in um in other places, automated enforcement is a game changer. So automated enforcement of speed and red light cameras. Illinois has done pretty much all the things wrong that it could possibly do as it relates to roll out of its automated enforcement related to corruption and other things. So we do have cameras in Chicago, but it's not a tool that's available for most communities to use. That's the best practice. So we've been calling for a comprehensive review of our state statute to help build to a better solution. Um, if you look at Chicago, okay, I don't expect you to do this, but I'll tell you I did it. I looked at 10 years of Chicago's ticketing data through the cameras, and then I looked at a couple years worth of police ticketing. And for so much stuff as it relates to traffic enforcement, we don't need police. The cameras actually do the job, and this is proven over and over. Um, okay, wait. Okay, cool. Slide 8, Maggie.
Okay, sorry, I'm just having trouble figuring out what number. Oh, there. Okay.
Oh, there we go. Okay, I just wanted to show this really, really quickly. I wanted to show these two maps of Chicago, and some of you may have seen these in a different hearing that we held. These are heat maps of speeding in Chicago. So in the turquoise are people speeding, driving over 40 miles an hour in a single day. And in purple are people driving over 50 miles an hour. So we've got good through all the different ways data is collected. We have CDOT was able to do some studies on this. What those maps tell us, and Chicago's not alone in this, what those maps tell us is if police are our solution, we're not going to have a solution. We would need a police officer in every single corner. And we know there are a lot of problems with police and traffic stops. So speeding is so widespread, um, so frequent that police enforcement would just never do it. So we need a few other tools. I mentioned automated enforcement reform being one of them. Another, which we're building towards by lowering the speed limit and getting more money into active transportation infrastructure, is building what are called self-enforcing streets. You can take the slide down, Maggie. So a self-enforcing street is designed in such a way that you can't speed. It has narrower lanes. It might have curves in it. It may have the raised crosswalks or speed bumps. There's a lot of different designs to make a street self-enforcing. We know what they are. They're not right for every context, but there are ways to design our roadways so they're not highways. And especially in the suburbs, why people are so upset about their state roads is because they're highways. They're highways right through our downtowns, right past our schools. So yeah, I don't know, John or Maggie, if you have other thoughts on that one.
Amy,
But I was trying to answer some questions in the chat, so I
Oh,
was a little
cool. Yeah, keep up the good
distracted.
work.
Amy O'Rourke was also asking, how do we prevent over policing with automatic enforcement?
Yes, yeah. So there's a lot of best practices around this. Using the data, um, and targeting the areas that need the street design first, you can use that camera data to do quick implementation. What we saw from the look at Chicago's data, though, just really quickly, is that most people got one or two tickets, and that was it over those 10 years period. That's 70% of the tickets. People only got once or twice. So, it's not, racking up mountains of debt in the way that I think people thought it would.
Okay, question from Katie, could you elaborate on the difference between responding to an action alert versus responding to or filing a witness slip? And John, I'm wondering if you could kind of speak about this when's the timing? Because I know we try to be strategic about when we ask people to take action, fill out a witness slip. So we're not bombarding you constantly with actions.
Yeah. So I think witness slips are what we deploy when a bill is in the committee stage, and it indicates to really just the members of the committee that are in the room, that there's a depth of public support for or opposition to a bill, and that's important. I think it's a useful organizational tool. But on kind of the hierarchy of Springfield advocacy, I put it lower down than responding to an action alert, that where you email your state legislators, or where you write an email yourself, to send a state legislator, or where you make a phone call, to your state legislator's office to express support or opposition. Those types of direct contacts, and the more personalized, that you get is better and more impactful. Like, an email is great, a phone call is better, an in-person conversation is best. Oftentimes, and that doesn't have to mean that you come down on a lobby day. A lot of state legislators, your state legislator might host office hours at a library or other building. You might, if you come across them at some other event, but or just call up their office and say, hey, I'd like 15 minutes with the senator. Next time it's not a session day. And oftentimes you'll find that state legislators are far more accessible, than you might expect. And one or two conversations from a few constituents can play a big role in shifting a member, and their view on a particular bill.
And you don't have to be an expert. Your expertise lies in your experience in your community. So like I get angry every single day that my child walks to school because they cross two different state roadways, and I'm anxious until they are there. And that's not acceptable. So my elected officials need to know that, even with a crossing guard, I don't feel like my child is safe walking to school. So, and that's just not the society we want, right? So you don't need to know the exact solution, is all I'm saying. We will help you with that.
But those conversations are important, as Tim was saying in the chat. He's been telling his peer groups at daycare, at church, to call your alder, support complete streets, support safe streets. So we can all help, talking to our networks. Let's see, a question about, I'm sorry if I'm missing some of these questions in the chat. We can maybe go over a little bit, a few minutes, if anyone is able to hang on still. But there's a question about self-enforcing streets. They've heard that they're effective for human drivers, but ineffective when you have robo-taxis, who don't think like humans. Any thoughts about these two tensions and any policy considerations?
I had not heard that. I think that's an interesting point, and certainly a good indication of why no pun intended, that I think the sponsors hope to kind of hit the brakes on this process and really study it and think through it. And I think that, the legislators I've talked to are want to see that too. So I think that's again, that in the Illinois streets, I think the way that certainly the city of Chicago and more of the entering suburbs are designed, I think look pretty different than a lot of the cities where Waymo is, for instance, is currently operating, that are not necessarily the older grid-like systems that aren't as dense as most of the as a lot of communities in our area are. Don't necessarily see things like snow that can change the appearance and of a street. So I think those are all considerations for any type of regulatory structure.
John, question from Neil around motor-driven cycles. Have local governments, IML or COGS, councils of government, been at the table for the e-moto e-bike legislative process? Yes, with the Secretary of State.
So has
I see.
go ahead, John.
Sorry. It's other law enforcement, like the various law enforcement groups, the state police, the chiefs of police, all four legislative caucuses, IDOT, the State Department of Natural Resources. I think that's
us.
Us and Ride Illinois, ABATE, the statewide motorcycle rider advocacy group. I think that it's been both IML, Northwest Municipal Conference, maybe others, but I would say like I said, there are a lot of cooks in that kitchen.
Oh, you're muted, Maggie.
Thank you. Question from Sarah about NETA. Sarah's wondering, can the revised updated NETA bill, so transit bill, include language regarding incorporating bike share into the regional transit system? So the current bill explicitly.
We tried to get that last year. For this year's bill, there's not going to be any substantive changes allowed. So we don't think. But if they crack open that door, there's going to be a flood of asks. So I think they're trying to keep it very tight. But that is definitely a possibility down the road, and something we could begin talking to RTA about. RTA could make that decision. I don't think we don't need legislation for that.
And then a question from Carl about action alerts. Can you just say again, John, are those for bills that have moved out of committee and are headed for a real vote?
Depends.
I think it depends. Yeah, but typically I think we hold off on sending out full action alerts until bill's out of committee. I think we might have made an exception for the safety stuff this week, but for you have a better chance of getting, if your individual legislator is not on a committee that a bill is before, they typically sort of tune stuff out until it's actually coming before them for a vote on the floor.
So you might notice we are somewhat judicious about witness slips and action alerts for that very reason. And it does get really confusing for folks if something's going to be amended, but they've already taken action or done a witness slip. It gets confusing. So we try to be really thoughtful about the timing when it's going to have the most impact.
And then I guess there's more questions in the Q&A. I think we've mostly addressed these questions about enforcement and the speed limit.
North Avenue comes up every time we talk about the speed limit, Charlie. It is like the case example for why we need state roads included. And it's like the length of North Avenue, maybe all the way out to St. Charles. And problems along the way.
Like, it's helpful for us to have examples like that.
It is very.
And if any of you are like, oh my gosh, this road in my community is really really difficult, very scary, not safe, please email me, Maggie@activetrans.org, and I'm making a list. So we have some case examples. All right. Oh, there we got another one. Stony Island. Okay.
Oh, yes,
Um,
always.
um, all right. Well, I think we can wrap up. So thank you, Amy, John. Thank you everyone for being here. I'm glad so many people are interested in this. And yeah, thank you for all of your efforts and support and helping us do this, because we need everyone to be involved in this fight for safer streets. So appreciate you all. Thank you, Amy and John, and we'll get this webinar posted online so you can share it away.
Thank you all so much.
So much.
Have a good day.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.